Many questions on your mind, searched all around, but you couldn't find. Here's a program that's made for you, so your faith can be renewed. Oh, we know easy, yes we know, but you gon' make 'em for sure. We'll become the saints in jeans and shirt. Catholic Faith Forum on TV.
Sociologists believe that an individual's immediate environment play a huge role in their growth and development. But to what extent is this true? Take, for instance, two individuals that grew up in the same community but turn out completely different from each other. One can become a successful entrepreneur, while the other might take to vices and become a hardened criminal. So what then is responsible for this disparity? Hi, I'm May, and you're watching Catholic Faith Forum, and today we shall be answering the question, should we blame the society for how people turn out? And with me in the house today, I have two amazing, beautiful women. Oh my God. In fact, I'm feeling outshined today. Okay, Ma, can we meet you?
My name is Dr. Franca Ato. I'm a lecturer in the Department of Sociology of the University of Lagos.
Okay, we're so happy to have you here today, Ma.
Thank you.
And you?
My name is Ogechi Nwobia. I am a writer, a travel enthusiast, and a lawyer in training.
Okay, you've heard it all, Abi. You're in for an amazing time. So let's just go on this short break, and when we come back, we'll go into the gist of the day. Stay with us.
Catholic Faith Forum on TV.
Welcome back. You're watching Catholic Faith Forum. I'm May, and I'm here with Dr. Franca Ato and Ogechi Nwobia. And we shall be talking about if the society should be blamed for how people turn out. So, Ma, can you answer us? Do you think the society is to be blamed for how people turn out?
Yes, in sociology we talk about the environment. Incidentally, the environment has a lot of role to play in how an individual turns out in life. But then environment has to be defined in the sense that when we're talking about an individual, we just have to look at, for instance, what does the environment consist of?
Okay.
For instance, you have the family, which is the primary agent of socialization, and you also have the schools, the church. These are all institutions that form part of the environment that are considered to be secondary agents of socialization. So it depends on, for instance, if a child is raised in a family, if a child is properly socialized to know the difference between rights and wrongs, religion might call it morality, okay? Sociology calls it norms.
Okay.
Once the child is properly socialized and the person internalizes those norms, the person comes out to become a good citizen of the society. Okay. But if, peradventure, the socialization goes awry, then it means that you might have a problem in your hands, especially if the secondary agent does not fall in to play its own role.
Okay. So I agree with you, Ma. But Ogechi, do you agree with her point that the society is actually to blame for how people turn out?
Yeah, I mean, to a very large extent. So she's broken down that the society is made up of different factors. So she's talked about the family as the smallest unit, and she's talked about schools, she's talked about churches. And the truth is, all of these factors come together. So, like she rightly mentioned, the child starts off with the family. That's the primary unit. If anything goes wrong at that level, it becomes extremely difficult for it to be fixed if other levels are not paying attention. And you find out that in most schools or in most religious organizations or whatever, they're not going to pay as much attention to a child as the child would get in their home. So to a very large extent, yes, I strongly believe that you can blame society in all the cumulative factors now, in all its cumulative elements for how a child turns out.
Okay, so what if the society has all these positive things to offer to the child, and then the child decides to go and do the opposite? What happens then?
Okay, so I think that largely our choices, the choices that we make as individuals are really influenced by the things that we see around us.
Okay.
So whether I'm choosing to define this chair I'm sitting on, for instance, as black or as white would largely depend on what a lot of people around me are saying. Okay. So you find out that if a child has not been properly socialized, like Dr. Atta mentioned, whatever the capacity to choose or to differentiate or to decipher right from wrong becomes a little bit skewed. So they're not as confident in determining what is right or wrong. They're not even fully certain. So again, it still comes back to the fact that if things are properly done at the level of the family, at the level of the school, at the level of the religious institutions, then you'd have people who are really, really responsible in terms of like the kind of choices that they make. So yes, our choices are very, very strongly influenced by the kind of things that we see and engage with around us.
Okay, nice point. Okay, Ma, what aspects of the society directly influence an individual to become whatever the individual decides to become in future?
The society itself is made up of various institutions.
Okay.
Various institutions in the sense that, like I said at the beginning, the family, which is the smallest unit, and the primary agent of socialization. And of course, you have the schools, you have the churches, you have other institutions in society. For instance, in today's world, we talk about the social media, which is fundamental. We talk about associations in sociology. Some people will say differential association. Now, the point she was trying to make when she was talking is the fact that it depends on the kind of relationship you have in society for a child. The people he interacts with, you know, to a great extent, they enable you to form your perception. What constitutes right or what constitutes wrong. I've seen kids who never knew the difference between right and wrong. And of course, you know, at that level, the child had already been formed. So when you're trying to, you know, correct the child, it becomes a problem because the child has never been socialized into believing that there is a basic difference between right and wrong. So it becomes a problem. And how is it that we, you know, you ask if two people are raised in the same environment, one turns out to become successful, the other person turns out to become a failure. Now, what you failed to mention was the fact that being raised in an environment, the same environment, does not necessarily mean being given the same homogeneous socialization. Somebody might be raised in an environment. It doesn't matter whether the environment is poor, middle class, or rich. You might be surprised that even somebody who was raised in a very poor environment had a lot of socialization in terms of values. You know, values passed on to the person. And at that level, the person internalizes those values and grows up with the values. Somebody might be raised in an upper class environment and there's no values passed on to the person. That is what we are seeing today. You find a lot of kids who supposedly are from very affluent families. You know, families that you thought could pass on values to them, but because nobody cares. And this child turns out invariably to become a failure in society. So the society has a problem at that level. Because if the institution of the family has failed, then what about the secondary agents of socialization? Of course, she mentioned the fact that the schools might not have time. But the question I ask is, why should the schools not have time? Because the truth is that the schools are agents of socialization. And the schools are there to ensure that there is social order in society. So if the schools are not doing what they're supposed to do, then something is wrong with that society. It means something is going wrong, and then the onus is on the society to fix those things that are going wrong in the society. Because invariably, at the end of the day, society is the ultimate loser.
Interesting. Okay, Ma, apart from, you mentioned the schools, what role do social and religious groups have to play in the development of an individual?
A lot. I could still look back, you know, when you were introducing the program, I recalled my childhood. As a little child somewhere on the island, the Sunday schools, the Girls' Guide, the Boy Scouts, these are things that are no longer in existence.
True.
And you see, those little organizations, the Red Cross, that we never thought were very important. I look back today and begin to realize some of the things I picked from those
we actually did learn a lot
associations. From them. Because the fact is that apart from the socialization you're getting at home, these small organizations try to reinforce that which you got at home. Now, associations like the Red Cross, the Girls' Guide, the Brownies, because I remember that once you're in school, when you're in junior primary, say primary 1 or 2, you join the Brownies. As you now proceed to higher primary, you join the Girls' Guide. Then, of course, for the boys, you have the Boy Scouts. Now, these are also agents of socialization. What they try to do is to reinforce that was taught to the child at home. And one of the things I've discovered over time is that doing is also knowing. The more you do, the more you know. And that's one of the problems we started having from the 90s in this country. The fact that over time, you know, maybe as a result of globalization, now you find a lot of young people, rather than internalize the values we have, people now get hooked onto the kind of values that were being streamed on television, on YouTube, and then satellite. And then we now forgot that which was our own. And gradually, those institutions are dying. And we're now having a generation of young people whose values are skewed or warped, as the case may be. Because we're beginning to look at things, you know, in the sense that we just believe that the end justifies the means. But invariably, the end does not justify the means. Because I just try to project in the next 20 years, if nothing is done to the institution of society, what is the kind of society we are going to have? A lot of young people today don't even have the right values. In the sense that they believe for them the most important thing is to have money. And
money-oriented.
Money all the time. So these are issues. If the basic ambition of a young person is to have money, it means that the person will go look for money irrespective of the means, okay? So we are raising a new generation of people who lack scruples. I will not use morality because that might be tending towards religion a lot. But people who lack scruples. And when people lack scruples, then any wonder that other institutions of society become corrupted. You now have corruption, okay? You have people doing things, you know, not going through the normal process. Then leadership becomes deficient in the sense that people were not actually raised to become leaders. You don't see this in other societies, even those societies that our young people are trying to copy. Let's take, for instance, the United States of America. You find that leadership is something that is a very serious process. People are raised to become leaders right from a young age without making emphasis on the fact that these people are being raised to become leaders. There are strategies, there are processes in a number of institutions, camping, you know, that over time the person now grows into that role. So we are going it the wrong way. And until we realize the fact that those things that we thought were old-fashioned or old-schooled were actually the things that made our society, we must go back to them. We are not saying put back the hands of the clock, but let us strengthen these our institutions so that these institutions begin to play the right roles they are supposed to play in the socialization of the child.
Okay, do you think it's possible to actually bring back these things that we've already lost? Because I don't know at which point we actually lost these things. Because I know when we're growing up, we had, at least we still had the Girls Guide. I can't remember the Brownies though, but I know we had the Girls Guide, we had the Boy Scout and a few other institutions. So how did we lose it and what can be done to bring it back?
We lost them at the point when government decided to take over schools. In fact, that was where the problem started from. Because as soon as government took over schools, government now forgot to strengthen those institutions that were embedded in the running of the schools. You find some schools that are still being run by private individuals having those things that we used to have. But these are insignificant in the sense that they are in the minority.
True.
Most of the schools today are being run by the state, either at the federal or at the state level. And you find today the states no longer emphasize those things. For instance, prayer. I went to school in this town, and most times when I tell people I grew up in this town, people will not believe. Because they keep wondering, how come you grew up in this town and you're not as wild
as everybody else around?
But the truth is that I went to a school where prayer was emphasized, even though it was a Catholic school. I went to a school where you had these processes, where people were raised, for instance, to realize that as young children, you're raised to play certain roles. I went to a school where community service was emphasized. Saturdays, we went out trying to help people to clean up. It could be in the barracks. You know, these are all leadership roles. But at that point in time, we never knew it was service. All we knew was that we were trying to help out maybe a community that was either deficient or in need to do one or two things. So that if, for instance, government still believes that they want to run schools, then government must run schools properly. Government must put into the schools resources. They must put into the schools personnel. They must put into the schools people who are properly trained, for instance, to be able to give these trainings and these services. But that's not the point at the moment. All we are trying to do is to raise people to learn how to read and write without taking into consideration that reading and writing alone does not make an individual.
Thank you very much, Ma. You mentioned something earlier about the internet and its influence. I would like, Ogechi, I would like you to answer that, but first of all, let's go to the streets and take people's opinions on what they think about the society and the influence on individuals. So please stay with us while we do this.
Catholic Faith Forum on TV.
When society mostly cannot teach history the way it is, so that people can learn from the past, you are contributing to the people's present behavior if they are misbehaving. And when society are not carrying people along, allowing democracy to have its roots to the grassroots, then people must behave. We will not follow the right channel or behave the way they are supposed to behave.
The society we are talking about is us, every one of us. We are the society. So from the family, from the home, the upbringing of a child starts. And church is also involved. School is also involved. The teachers, even the youth is involved in order to train up the young ones so that they will also become youth. And the youth, they are also under, let me call it the tutelage of the parents or those that have grown ahead of them. So everybody is involved in upbringing of children so that there will be a better society.
What is a society? A society is made up of human beings, made up of people, and the society as an entity influences one's behavior. The society is people made up the society. So those people you meet in the course of your interaction or whatever you do in the society definitely will have an impact in your upbringing, either negatively or positively.
The society is just like the environment, and the children, you always see them within the environment. So if the environment is passing a good message, it will also affect the children while they are growing up. So the society has an important role to play in the upbringing of a child or a children.
Catholic Faith Forum on TV.
Welcome back. There you have it, word from the streets. People actually believe the society is to blame for how people turn out. So before we went on the break, I actually asked Ogechi a question. So do you believe the internet has a huge influence on how people turn out?
Yes, and very strongly so. So we're in that social media age where everybody wants to live the perfect life for the gram. You know, so you're having a moment and your first thought is, I need to share this for the gram. You know, like selfies on the gram, you're tweeting about where you've been, what you're doing. And I have found that inadvertently, that puts a lot of people under pressure. So when you consider, for instance, people you went to school with, say you left school 1 or 2 years ago, and you're just casually scrolling down your social media, and you see somebody posing in a G-Wagon, and you're like, oh my God, I don't have a car yet. You know, or you're seeing people tweeting about like being on luxury vacations, and you're thinking, oh my God, that should be my life, or like I would really want that. It tends to inadvertently put a lot of pressure on young people. So there's this desire to set the process aside and just go straight into the promised land. Okay, so like TD Jakes likes to say, there is no promised land without the wilderness. You have to go through the process, so you need to stay in your process. But then because of social media, because everybody makes their lives seem perfect, you just then... Yeah, no, because I strongly believe that a lot of people don't even pause to think, oh wait, is this person's life really this way like all of the time? You know, so I post in the morning, oh, I'm having coffee by the poolside. And then in the afternoon, I'm having this fantastic meeting in a conference room. 9 out of 10 times, these are just like only bits and pieces of what really makes people's lives.
True.
So as much as people would post or tweet or do whatever about like how perfect their lives are, you don't know what makes them soak their pillows at night. You don't know what makes them worry. You don't know what causes them depression. When they are depressed, they're probably not even tweet about it. You know, I mean, like, although that's like a double-edged sword. So you have people who are like all over social media, and then sometimes they're like, oh, this is what I'm really feeling, this is what I'm really going through. But more often than not, people want to post picture perfect lives on social media. And if you're not careful as an individual, if you don't have a strong presence of mind, if you don't even know how to detox, you get sucked into that. And before you know what's happening, you've lost yourself. So it's really important to, like, as much as social media is good, it's really, really important to detox from it sometimes. Just take a break and then not necessarily take every single thing at face value.
So you're indirectly saying that social media has had more of a negative effect than a positive effect on an individual.
Yeah.
Okay, yes and no.
Okay.
The social media is supposed to be a learning platform, but at the same time, it could also be a world of make-believe.
True.
So it depends on the kind of socialization you've had, for instance. If somebody has been properly socialized into realizing that all that glitters is not gold, then you'll be able, for instance, to discern between what is, and what ought to be.
Okay.
Okay. A good example is a few days back, we had this this news break about somebody who ordinarily was supposed to be a celebrity. Somebody who had everything going for him. And then we woke up to the fact that he committed suicide. And people were trying to question, what would, for instance, make such a person, somebody that they thought had everything going for him, committing suicide? And that is where, for instance, I belong to a group that believes that, for instance, television is not something young people should be hooked onto.
True.
But unfortunately, that is what is happening today. We socialize our children into television. Mothers have, for instance, forgotten the fact that the role of a mother is something that it carries a lot of responsibility. Same with the father too. So that if you bring a child into the world, the child is your responsibility.
Definitely.
You must be able to bring this child in such a way that this child must be able to internalize the norms and values of his or her society. But what happens today is that we are all looking for money because we want to impress our friends and our neighbors. So what do you find? You find children who, as soon as they wake up in the morning, at a very young age, the house help turns on the television for them.
To keep them busy and distracted.
And the house help actually has so much to do on her hands. So the essence of putting the child on the television is not to educate the child, just to make sure that the child does not disturb him or her, to enable him or her to do her work. So gradually, this person is socialized into visuals, and the person grows up. And I can tell you as a teacher that this is something that has tremendous effect on children, because you'll be amazed that even at the level of the university, it still affects children. People who have been socialized into visuals, they find it, for instance, very, very difficult to have a good imagination.
Wow.
And it affects their writing, it affects their thinking, it affects their output. So these are things that we must realize. And once we realize this, just like he said, it is a double-edged sword, I wouldn't, for instance, advocate for us to do away completely with the internet. Because I use the internet a lot to learn, okay?
It's very beneficial.
I advise my students, maybe I put out something, I say, go on the night. I give a link. Watch something on YouTube. But that does not mean that you spend the greater part of your time on the night, okay? Either Facebooking, WhatsApping, or on the Instagram. And these are things that one must be able to have that discipline to know that at a particular time of the day, for instance, I should be somewhere. At another time of the day, for instance, the television must not be on. The radio must not be on. These are things people should be socialized into. But unfortunately, our society is not doing that.
Yes.
But I don't know. Maybe you asked a question before we went on break. You were saying, how can we do that? How can we come back to that? We can only come back to that, for instance, when the state realizes that there are certain aspects of society today in the 21st century that the state should not go into. I strongly believe, for instance, that the state has no business going into education. I strongly believe, okay? Even in situations where they want to do that, they must play a very insignificant role. Maybe to set the agenda. It must be an agenda setting, an oversight function, so that you lay down the policies and they enable people, for instance, who have the time, the resources, and the energy to go into them and then be able to come out with something that is not only productive, but something that will be useful for the society. Because invariably, whatever we are doing at the end of the day is to ensure that there is social order in society.
Nice. When you were talking, you actually took me back to my childhood days. And I remember when we used to watch TV when we were children, our parents would first watch whatever we're going to watch. They'll preview it before we get to watch it. But I think these days, parents just put everything out there for their children to watch. And then they learn the good and the bad alike, and there's no process. So I don't know what we can do to stop that. I don't know how we can help that.
I mean, I know for a fact you can password certain channels or certain programs or whatever. So I guess that's one step that can actually be taken.
Does it really
Parental.
work?
I believe it would. I mean, you can only try. No, because the truth is, young people are getting so much more smarter and much more cunning than, I mean, particularly with the advent of the internet. So it's very easy. We all have mobile phones, so I could very easily just say, oh, how do I override the password? And maybe Google would give me the answer. But it's worth a try. I think it's worth a try.
Yeah, in addition to that, you see, I also strongly believe that individual families can also set their own agenda, for instance, on how they want to raise their children. When I was raising my children, for instance, I had a rule: Monday through Friday, no television.
Only on weekends.
Only on weekends. And that depends on the grade you're coming home with, from the weekly test. And anybody who lived in my house, you either obey these rules or you ship out. And believe you me, you see, what it did for me as a person was that I raised my children on the fact that they could read novels and books. And over time, even now, you find that for me to watch television most of the time is to tune into CNN because I want to catch up on news or what is happening in the world or whatever. You can hardly find me, for instance, trying to watch the novellas because you see, these are things I wasn't used to as a person. So that is when you raise children, for instance, in school, I use movies a lot. There are some courses that I want to anchor, and occasionally I will mount movies. Why? Because I believe that this is a generation that's been socialized on visuals. And the only way, for instance, to connect with them is to make them to watch. Once they watch, they connect. They are able, for instance, to comprehend faster and then to give you what you want them to give you. So that these are things that parents on their own must be able to, there must be a mix, modernity and then the old values. How do we have this potpourri so that at the end of the day, the child comes out the best for the society? Because invariably, whatever we are doing in society, whether we are raising children either as schools or as parents, we are raising these individuals for the society. Good or bad, the society will be the ultimate loser or the one that will benefit from such socialization.
Yeah, I for one believe that no matter how much is put into an individual, at the end of the day, the person has to be emotionally mature enough to decipher what they decide to do with themselves or not. Yes, so if you agree with me on this point, at what point do you think an individual is mature enough to make decisions for themselves?
That's very relative. So it's really, really relative. And I say that because, so I was, as a child, and I liked what you said about like your family said, the family set an agenda. Same way I was raised, you don't watch TV anyhow. So when we have the long vacation, my father has already buying a textbook for the next year. You actually never really catch a break. So those things are really important, like instilling the right values, discipline, diligence, hard work. My parents ingrained all of those into me. I really very strongly believe that they're the reason I turned out the way I did. But then your question was more or less about, at what point does a person become mature enough? And I say it's relative because, first of all, you have to consider people have different personality types. So a lot of people are a lot more timid than others. Some are a lot more expressive. They're just so much more out there. They're more assertive. They're able to say, oh, this is what I want and this is how I'm going to go about it. So it's really relative. I don't believe there's a fixed age. You just need to observe that child and sometimes let them make their own mistakes. Then from their mistakes, you see how they learn from those mistakes and you determine, okay, maybe this person is emotionally mature enough. There are people who went to boarding schools at age 9, getting into secondary school at age 9, you ship them off to boarding school immediately. Some of those people come out and then by the time they're finishing, they're timid. Some other person is shipped off to boarding school at the age of maybe even age 8. And then when they're done, they have a strong presence of mind. So it largely depends on the child's personality type. Depends on the kind of environment that they've been raised in, and then let them make their own mistakes and let them learn from it, and then you as a parent will determine, okay, just how much has this child grown or evolved. Thank
you very much. There you have it. It's been an exciting conversation. I've actually enjoyed this conversation so much. Everyone has a role to play in an individual's makeup and development. from the society, the family, and even the individual themselves. So let's all do our part to make sure that we all turn out right. It's been an amazing time with you. Thank you for being with us, Ma.
You're welcome.
And thank you so much, okay. Okay, till next time, keep being saints in jeans and shirts.